All right, it is December 16th. We have certainly no baseball to talk about still. Very much not. Um, but should we just like sit here for an hour? Just like talk about our personal lives and stuff?
Nah, that's what it seems like the league is doing. So maybe we might as well do the same thing.
No, right. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as like news to get into, the MLB and the MLB Players Association are now expected to discuss the core economics of lockout until January. Um, so you're not getting anything in the next few weeks at the bare minimum. So
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's kind of like expected, maybe because
right,
the holidays, whatever's got coming up. It's almost like though they're just delaying the inevitable because they know it's not going to be easy anyway, so they just want to push it back. Whatever the core economics means, they're not. They're pretty vague about that, so I
no,
don't really
yeah.
know.
So I don't know. Maybe sometime after the new year we'll get some news, but we'll see.
I hope so. It would be nice. I mean, I've heard that like they think it could start on time, but if they're not talking about this until January, I don't see spring training starting when it usually does.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if you're aware, the Mets are looking for a manager. They
Still, right? They are.
no, they're
Yeah.
they're still doing that. Yeah. So it is down to three guys apparently now. It's Buck Showalter, Joe
Okay.
Espada, and Matt Quatraro. Hopefully, I got his name right. Um, I do not know who those last two guys are. I know Buck though. He is a great manager.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about it last week how we both would prefer Buck. So would Max Scherzer. So
Yeah.
that's something there too. I think Joe Espada was a bench coach maybe in Houston, or he was a bench coach somewhere this year. I don't know about the other guy, but yeah, I mean, I think Buck is probably going to be the guy that gets it. Obviously, they can't. I don't think they can make any deals with managers either until this lockout ends.
Yeah.
But I feel like he's probably the guy. I would say.
I think they're also going to interview him on the day this releases. I'm pretty sure on this Friday the 17th they're going to interview him. So
Okay.
see what comes of that. But yeah, it would be
Yeah, I
nice
mean,
to get that.
it seems like a good fit. I think we talked about it last week. I mean, I think that with a young team that, like, obviously, again, there's no sugarcoating it. The Mets have kind of struggled recently, and
Yeah.
getting a guy with experience and stuff after the moves they just made, I think it's a perfect fit. I really do. So
Yeah.
we'll see what direction they go, though.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, take us into our deep dive. What we talk about today.
Yeah, so being there's not really much current stuff to talk about, we're kind of just going to talk about some other stuff, previous seasons, stuff like that, like we
Some
did last week a
throwbacks.
little
Okay.
bit.
Okay.
So what I kind of want to talk about is there's been like a ton of like second base shortstop combos, like great ones over the years, but I'm kind of going to look at ones from most recently, maybe since like 2008-ish, something like that. So I'm going to kind of give you a list of like my top five. So the criteria I kind of looked at was they've had to have played together for 5 seasons on the same team, and pretty much just looking at their stats and seeing who was the best. So I'm going to go with my number five is J.J. Hardy and Jonathan Scope, who played together with
Mm,
Baltimore. And I'm looking at the seasons from 2013 through 2017. Unfortunately, the Orioles actually didn't make the playoffs. I think they did in 16. They made the wild card game, but I don't think they made it in any of the other seasons they played
that was
together.
it. Really? Only one time?
I think so. I think they made the
Huh.
playoffs in 12. They might have maybe in 13, but I'm not positive.
I guess I remember them
But
being
I
better than
mean,
they were. I don't know.
yeah, they may have. I don't remember. I just know 2016 sticks in my head a lot.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Hardy was kind of he was an all-star during this stretch. He had a Silver Slugger. He won 2 Gold Gloves. If you remember JJ Hardy, man, he was like a great defender.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I feel like he probably could have won Platinum Gloves over his career. I don't think he ever did, but he was a really good defender.
Did you ever go
I
to like
mean,
Camden Yards when the PA announcer would announce him? They'd be like J Hardy.
yeah,
Like that was always like
yeah, that was great, man. I mean, Baltimore loved him too. He played most of his career there.
yeah, he was a staple there.
And this was kind of back, I guess shortstops kind of started to get more powerful, like home run wise around this time. But this was also kind of a guy who wasn't that big of a power hitter. During this 5-year stretch, he would average like 11 homers. So it's not like what we see now, but back then that was pretty solid for a shortstop, honestly.
Yeah, it's definitely changed a little bit in recent years.
Yeah, and for Scope, I mean, he kind of took a while to get going when he first came up. But I think like in 2017, Scope was an all-star. He had like a great season that year. But I mean, he averaged 18 homers a year during this 5-year stretch and a 762 OPS. That was pretty solid for a second baseman. You could say the same thing about second baseman. I guess they started to get more powerful with a guy like Scope is a big example, actually. But
yeah,
I think that 18 homers, but I believe in 2017 he had close to like 30 homers. It was like his best season by far.
Yeah.
So that was my number 5.
Honestly, that whole infield was pretty solid because you had Manny a third, and this was before Chris Davis fell off a cliff.
Right.
So there was a lot.
I think
of power
they had Mark Trumbo too during this time, who did play first sometimes as well. So yeah, I mean that Baltimore infield, and if you talk about teams that should have won more, I guess in the playoffs or made it to the World Series or something, we talked about it a little last week. This was one of them. And like again too, I'm probably missing some great duos from like this time period, but there's so many good ones. It's like really tough to narrow it down to like 5 is really difficult.
That's a good 5 pick. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my number 4 pick is a guy who's on the Mets now, with his old second base partner from Cleveland. I'm going with Lindor and Jason Kipnis.
Oh yeah, Jason Kipnis. Yeah. Okay.
So Kipnis actually had some really good seasons during the years that Cleveland made the playoffs. I mean, they made the playoffs. So I'm looking at the years 15 through 19. So that's actually before Lindor kind of dropped off the cliff. Well, again, we're hoping that he doesn't do this anymore, but we'll see. But man, like they made the playoffs 3 years out of those 5. Obviously, they were in the World Series in 2016 and really could have easily won that Game 7. So it could have been looked at a lot differently in Cleveland lore if they had won with these two guys. But
I'm gonna talk about that later. But yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. And Lindor, his 290 batting average, 26 homers, 839 OPS, 19 stolen bases. That's what he averaged over this stretch. He was a 4-time All-Star, Silver Slugger twice, Gold Glove twice. Can't really say anything bad about him during this 5-year stretch, honestly. He was probably the best shortstop in the league at this point, I think.
No, yeah, you were talking about when shortstops were getting more power. I feel like he was right at the start of it. He was one of the leaders of it.
I mean, if you look at guys, it was probably him. It was Seager, Correa, Baez even. And I mean, Kipnis, though, man, for a second baseman, he averaged 16 homers a year during the stretch. He had a 752 OPS. He was an all-star once during this 5-year period. But like he had some big at-bats in the playoffs. I remember he was a really good postseason hitter too. And again, man, they could have won it all. I know you're going to talk about it a little bit later. It's like they could have easily won it all. I mean, they had great teams. And like we've talked about, if you're going to be a good team, you need to have good defensive fielders up the middle. That's just what everybody talks about. So your middle infield has to be great defensively. Kipnis never won a Gold Glove, but he was pretty good defensively at second base. I think it was also helpful that he was a lefty, because that kind of bounced out their lineup a little bit too. And man, it was just so much fun to watch every time they were in the playoffs.
Yeah, they were a solid team. Yeah, they had a good run.
I'm going to stick with the same time period here, 2015 through 2019. I'm going to go with Correa and Altuve.
Yeah, that's a classic one.
Listen, I mean, as much as we aren't sure how much the cheating was involved in everything, obviously the league has covered up some stuff that we think the opposite happened. But irregardless, they had great seasons during these 5 years, Altuve especially, but Correa averaged 20 homers a year and 853 OPS. The only thing with Correa is that he averaged only 109 games played over this 5-year stretch, so he got hurt a lot.
I remember that. Yeah.
So that was kind of one reason why, because I thought I could have easily had them ahead of one of my next two choices, but being Correa got hurt a lot, I'm looking at like their playing time. So I think that kind of hurts him a little bit. But obviously, he was the Rookie of the Year in 2015. He was an All-Star once too, and they won the World Series in 2017. 4 years in the playoffs during that time. So
Yeah.
he was a big reason why. Altuve basically has absurd numbers over these 5 years. And again, we're not sure how much the trash cans were involved or not after 2017, but 322 batting average, 887 OPS, 25 stolen bases. He averaged 146 games played. So that's a big difference compared to how many games Correa averaged. Four-time All-Star, four-time Silver Slugger, Gold Glove once, and he won the MVP.
Over Aaron
I think
Judge.
It was stolen from my boy Aaron Judge, though. But it is what it is at this point. I think even if Judge won it, Altuve still had these great seasons. And I mean, he still had a great year this year. I think it took him a little while to get over the cheating stuff that came out. Obviously, all the Astros kind of struggled in the shortened season. So I think Correa just had his best year ever this year. But obviously, I'm not looking at 2021. So
right.
I don't know. How do you feel about like the games played, like the amount of games they played? Does that factor in for you if you were making a list like this?
Yeah, I think a little bit. If you're missing, what do you miss? Like average about 50 games lost a year. Yeah, I think. Yeah. I remember him just being out a lot.
Right.
So yeah, no, I think it's an impact. I mean, if he's not gonna be on the field, it's hard to rank them higher.
I think it's like especially because of your shortstop. Like the shortstop is supposed to be like the captain of the team or whatever, or of the infield, whatever it is. I think it's just a big impact. I mean, because they had guys filling in at short back then. I think it was like Marwin Gonzalez, who obviously had some good seasons, but he wasn't Carlos Correa, or Aledmus Diaz, and he's not Carlos Correa. Like they had guys filling in, but they weren't at the same level. So, I mean, as good as the Astros were during these 5 years too, man, if Correa played even more games, they would have won even more games. So,
yeah,
that's just something, I don't know. That's just something, a lot of people might disagree with that just looking at his stats, but I don't know, man. I think that, but so I'm moving on to number 2, and this kind of bring back some memories for you. Not very good ones, I don't think. I'm going with Jimmy Rollins and Chase Utley from the Phillies, and I'm looking at 2008 through 2012. So those were probably not fun memories for you.
They're just pesky, man. Because like they weren't even, I don't know, they weren't even huge power guys. I feel like they just did like every little thing that would piss you off. I mean, obviously
everything.
Utley had the incident with
right,
and everything, but
but irregardless of Met fans not liking them, they were a great combo, arguably the best in the National League, at least ever. They were, excuse me, they were in the playoffs for 4 years. Out of those 5, they won the World Series in 2008. They made it to the World Series in 2009. They lost to the Yankees that year, but so that was 2 years in a row that they made it to the World Series. That's pretty hard to do. So, I mean, Rollins over that time, he averaged 16 homers a year. 31 stolen bases a year was what he averaged over 136 games. So he was hurt a little bit, but I mean, he still had 31 stolen bases a year. That's pretty crazy. I mean, that's what shortstops used to do. Now, that's not really like what you're expecting from them.
Right.
But I mean, Rollins averaging 16 homers a year is pretty high for this time, I think, for shortstops.
It's probably, like, I mean, it's more than like Hardy we were talking about.
Right. I think most guys were like between the 10 to 15 homer range at shortstop, if not lower at this time. So, I mean, I think Rollins was a great defender too. 3 Gold Gloves during this time. He was like the typical speed defense guy. You know what I mean? I feel like at shortstop, back in the day, that was what they used to be more of.
I feel like this duo was like one of the last of that mold before it kind of switched over to like who were just like Frankie and Correa and like all that we were talking about.
Yeah. I mean, and as for Utley, obviously Mets fans really have their beef with him from the Dodgers situation. That was not a good play. Very illegal now. But Listen, Utley was a great hitter. He averaged 20 homers a year during this time. He had an 843 OPS, 15 stolen bases. He averaged about 123 games played. So I think,
I think I
the
heard that.
first 2 years out of this stretch when they made the World Series 2 years in a row, he played almost every game. The last 3 years, from like 2010 through 2012, he kind of started to get hurt a little bit. I
Mm.
think they would also start to sit him against lefties because he started to not hit as well against guys who were throwing left-handed. But Utley was a three-time All-Star and two-time Silver Slugger, so he was a really good player. Pesky, was he the leadoff guy or was Rollins? I forget who was. Or I
Not
think they
sure,
hit
but they
1-2
easily
though.
could both could have been, like they're exactly that
Yeah.
mold.
I mean, those playoff teams, man, I don't remember the '09 World Series that vividly because we were pretty young, but
Yeah.
I mean, they had some big hits against us. I'll tell you that. And
Ryan
then
Howard was on
obviously
that team. He was a beast.
Ryan Howard. I think Shane Victorino was on the team.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Hunter
that was
Pence,
back when
was
they
he
had
there?
Hunter Pence might have been
That's a
on one.
throwback.
Yeah, he might have been. I mean, their pitching staff too. They had Cole Hamels, Doc Holliday. The late Doc Holliday was on the team.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, they had just great teams. Jonathan Papelbon, I think, was the closer back then. Those Philly teams were pretty haunting to the Mets. I'll tell you that.
No, I feel like when I was a kid, they were always number one, and they were always that team
Yeah.
that pissed you off that way. I mean, now the Braves have kind of taken that reign
Yeah.
right after the Phillies fell off. But
What I find interesting is like the Phillies made the playoffs in 2011, I think, for the last time, or maybe 12, and now they haven't made the playoffs since. Like that was kind of the end of
that was
that
really
era.
it. Yeah, it fell off very quickly because then Howard
Yeah.
got hurt on the last day of the season.
Yeah.
Then they lost in the DS, and then that was it. It was a very abrupt ending.
Because then soon after that, it was like Utley got traded to the Dodgers, I think, and then Rollins did at some point too, or they signed with the Dodgers. Whatever happened, the pitcher started to leave. Cole Hamels went to Texas.
Right.
I mean, that was just like that was probably one of the first teams that really just started to rebuild. You know what I mean? They kind of let everybody out.
Yeah.
Them and the Astros at that time were probably the two teams that were doing it most. Because remember back in the day, that was probably around the time when Altuve made his debut, and the Astros were like selling everyone. They had no one. Yeah. They were horrible. But yeah, I mean, I think Utley and Rollins could have easily been number one, but my number one is Derek Jeter and Robinson Cano.
Of course.
Man, it's just hard to argue. Man, once I tell you these numbers, it's just pretty ridiculous.
No, I believe it, sadly.
I mean, listen, from 08 to 12 are the years I'm doing with the Yanks, with these guys. They made the playoffs from 2009 through 2012. They missed in 08, but they won the World Series in 2009. Derek Jeter averaged a 303 batting average, 12 homers a year, 17 stolen bases a year, and he averaged 150 games played over these 5 years. Typical shortstop numbers, typical Jeter numbers. That's why he's in the Hall of Fame. He was an all-star all 5 of these seasons. He was a Silver Slugger 3 times, and he won 2 Gold Gloves. So, I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. You got to be honest.
He's hard to argue against. Even didn't Correa come out the other day and was like, "Oh, Jeter's overrated." It's like that's
Jeter. Not what Correa came out and said. Jeter didn't deserve any of the Gold Gloves.
That's what it was.
Yeah, and I mean, look, if you look at the metrics nowadays, I guess some guys were probably better, but like that's not what they looked at back then. So like I don't know how you can really argue that.
It's a weird comment to make, but
plus he was a great defender, man. Jeter pretty much invented the ball in the hole jump play, throw to first.
So exactly. Yeah.
I mean, he was an insane defender. He was really good. Obviously, as he got older too, he became worse, but that happens to almost every shortstop. Right. So like, but man, when you look at Cano, I mean, this was, as far as we know, this was before any steroids. Obviously,
right.
It might not have been, but Cano averaged a 305 batting average, 31 homers, 96 RBIs, and an 862 OPS, and he averaged 160 games played per season. So, I mean, this was peak Robbie Cano, man.
That's really
He
good.
was. I didn't even remember how good he actually was at the time until I looked up these numbers. He was just like unbelievable.
And this is right before he dipped for Seattle, right?
I think he left for Seattle in 13 or 14,
Right.
or something like that. So yeah, um, I
He
mean,
won the Derby at one point.
Yeah, he did. He won the home run derby. I think, yeah, that was pretty memorable because his dad pitched to him.
Right.
So that was pretty cool. Also, I mean, man, he was just made for the short porch. That's the thing. Like, not that he was getting a lot of cheapies, but I mean, a left-handed swing. A lot of people said he had the best left-handed swing, the sweetest swing. Yankee Stadium was literally the perfect place for him. That's why I never got why he went to Seattle. I get the money situation, but
yeah,
you probably would have put up better numbers if you stayed with the Yankees. We gave him a pretty good offer too, but Seattle just gave him more money. But he was an all-star 3 times, Silver Slugger 3 times, 2 Gold Gloves too. Cano was a great defender too. A lot of people forget that because he's not as good now as he was, but man, during his early years with the Yanks, he was awesome. He just made everything look so smooth. You know what I mean? He was almost sometimes he would like take his time too long and like a guy would be safe or something. And the Yankee fans would like rip into him about that. But otherwise, he was a really good defender. He had a great arm too. He definitely could have played third. You know, he could have played anywhere in the infield. I don't know if he could have been a shortstop, but third base he could have definitely played. So
yeah. Did you know he's still on the Mets? I just completely forgot. And then I was like,
I don't know where you guys are going to play him this
year. He has a good like 20 million next to him. Yeah. Like, God bless it.
So do you think that you guys are going to play him this year, or are you guys going to try to trade him once the lockout ends? I don't know if anyone would take him, honestly, but like, unless the Mets like ate money, but like you guys would not want to do that either. Like, I mean, honestly,
we simply have like the number one payroll in the league right now. So
I think there are teams that would like take him, but like you would also be selling low because he just came off the PED season for the 3rd time where he was suspended. I mean, who knows? If you guys don't like watch him be like a great hitter this year, because he was good during the shortened season. Sure. The thing is that I don't know if you can play him in the field. I think the only way you guys keep him is if the DH becomes universal and you can DH him. But then you might want to DH Dom Smith. Like, I don't know. That's a tough situation. You know what I mean?
I feel like there's other guys we plug in there.
Even Pete, like if you want to give Pete a day off, you would put him at DH or something. Like, but I mean, if we're talking about the Mets strictly right now, I think Jeff McNeil is probably out the door. I don't know. I just don't think you. I don't think you can count on Cano in the field every day, though. That's all I'm saying. I don't think so.
Yeah, no. But he had a great run with you guys.
He did. He had a great run with Seattle too. They never made the playoffs. He had really good years there too. Yeah, but that's my top 5. I know I probably missed a decent amount, but let's put it this way: is there anyone on this list that you would have like flip-flopped ahead of anyone?
Like maybe I can maybe make the case to put Correa and Altuve second. But like,
yeah, that was difficult for me, but I also couldn't do it because of the cheating thing.
No, so. Right. Like there's always a good asterisk on that.
Yeah.
No, I agree with most of it. Plus the World
I was trying to actually rack my head around it.
Team, so.
Yeah. So like I wanted to put a Met guy, like Jose Reyes was a beast during whatever these years were, but the Mets never really had a guy consistently playing second. That was the other thing. Because I could have, like, if we were doing a shortstop list during this time, Reyes would have definitely been there.
Right. I mean, the combo of Reyes and David Wright was like a fantastic.
Right. So like, yeah, I was gonna say if we were doing like shortstop, third base, they might have even been number 1. I know Jeter A-Rod was a good one too, but A-Rod had the steroid issues, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that Jose Reyes was a great shortstop at that time. It always was so interesting to me when he got traded to Miami, or did he sign with Miami?
He signed Miami.
That was a whole weird thing. And then he got traded to Toronto like the next year or something, right? Or then he went to Colorado. It was just so – because then he ended up back with you guys for how long? Like a few years, right?
Like, for like a year. I don't know. He was so bad.
Yeah.
But you know, growing up, he was absolutely one of my favorites. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I would like play catch with my dad and like try to imitate him and like fielding ground balls. You know, like he was just like my idol. But
He was another guy that was classic, like really fast. He would have a lot of stolen bases.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What were his power numbers like? Was he ever close to 20 homers, or
No,
was he more like Jeter at Rollins,
no,
like
he was like probably
12 to?
less than
Yeah,
Jeter, honestly.
you think so? Yeah,
But he stole a ton. So
yeah, he was awesome. I'll never. I just always picture him in like the old Mets jerseys that weren't pinstripes, like the all whites and the black
yeah,
jersey
yeah,
too. Like that's just always how I remember him. So
yeah. All right, so shifting a little bit, we want to do a little segment on teams of recent memory that should have won more than they did. Now it's funny we were just talking about Reyes. I feel like the
right,
2006 Mets could definitely have been one of them, or like that whole era. But that's not who I put down for this week. The first when you first posed this question to me earlier in the week, the first team that came to mind was this year's Padres, the 2021 Padres. But we've talked a lot about them at this point, so I didn't want to be redundant. So I'm gonna go with we touched on it earlier, the 2018 Indians. So
okay,
they've also done 2017. That year they won 102 games. Then they
yeah.
swept the Yankees in the ALDS. They're up 2-0. That team was
I remember
nuts.
that. Yeah, that was it 17 where they had that huge winning streak too,
Oh yeah, like
like
20
with
something
Jay
games.
Bruce. Yeah, it was something crazy. Like it was. Oh man, those were some great teams. Like I talked about before, it was
No,
just
yeah. So my point is I could have gone with any of these teams.
yeah.
I'm gonna do 2018 just because like some numbers really stood out to me. So 2018 they win only 91 games, but if you go by their run differential, they were expected to do 98. So like this was a stacked team.
Mhm.
So lineup wise, you had Lindor 38 homers, 871 OPS. Jose Ramirez 39 homers, 939. Encarnacion 32, 810. um, Michael Brantley, 832 OPS. So like you have the huge guys up top. Then even like the lower guys, Yan Gomes, Melky Cabrera, Yonder Alonso, Jason Kipnis, they were like average. They were like OPS over 700. So there was not really a bad guy in the lineup. It was a very solid lineup. Then you get to pitching. You had four guys over 200 strikeouts. You had Corey
Mm.
Kluber, Clevenger, Carlos Carrasco, Trevor Bauer. Um, their ERAs too, man. 2.8, 3.0, 3.3. Bauer was 2.2.
Bauer was
They,
that good in 18.
yeah, he missed a couple starts, but
Wow,
he was that good.
wow.
Um, Interestingly, Shane Bieber was also on this team as a rookie. He was like a
He was.
4.5
Oh
ERA,
wow.
but
Okay,
his FIP was better. Anyway, so
man.
this
Can you
was not,
imagine he was as good as they were too that year?
dude. The
Oh
amount of
man.
pitchers they churned out in like this like
Yeah.
5 or 6 year stretch is crazy, and they got
They
rid
like
of
still
all of
are
them.
too. Yeah, right, exactly. Except for fucking Bieber.
But that's probably coming
Yeah.
next year. They always
Yeah, right.
so I don't know. The team was like frustratingly good.
Yeah.
The only like downside was the bullpen was iffy. Like their four main guys, the ERAs were like close to 5. Their closer, Cody
Hmm.
Allen, I forgot about him. His ERA
Wow,
was
yeah.
4.7. So
Really?
really, the lineup was great. Started was amazing, and then the bullpen was not great. Um, they get to the postseason. They're swept by the Astros in the
Oof.
ALDS. Um, Two of the losses were by 5 runs or more. I don't actually remember
Wow.
that series very well at all. But like I
I don't
just
either. I feel like that maybe was a series like you know how they have like the day games
yeah, I
even
think
during
that's
the week
exactly what
because
it
they're
was.
trying to
Yeah.
yeah, that might have been the series that was a day game because I don't remember watching much of it at all.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just huge underachievers, I feel like. And I mean, granted, the Astros were great. That was also the year the Red Sox won like 108. So maybe they wouldn't have gone anywhere
Right.
anyway if they moved on, but like just a really good team. And I don't know. It's probably painful as a Cleveland fan.
Yeah, man. Cleveland baseball fans, Cleveland sports fans in general haven't really gotten much to celebrate recently, unfortunately for them.
Not really.
Dude, I mean, I completely forgot Encarnacion was on that team too.
Yeah, apparently.
Like
Yeah.
he was awesome. Now I'm remembering now that he was like really good his years in Cleveland. Um, I mean Ramirez and Lindor. If we're talking like second base, I mean shortstop, third base combos, that's probably one of the best of all
They were
time too.
nice. For like a good 4 years, they
Um,
were really nice.
yeah, I mean I remember Melky Cabrera had a pretty solid season with the Indians that year too. their problem was obviously not the lineup,
No.
or the starting rotation. It was obviously the bullpen. Cody Allen had some good years for them too. I'm surprised that he was that bad in 2018. I know he started to get worse, like when he went to the Angels, I think, or wherever he went to after that.
Yeah.
But
I looked at the
yeah,
postseason numbers. I think Allen in that series he pitched one inning and gave up like 6 runs. So
are you serious?
he wasn't just a culprit in the regular season. He clearly blew it for them. I'm trying to think of who else really didn't do well. I think one of the starters got blown up, but like yeah, it just did for 3 games. It did not come together, which is just like it's just amazing how good a season you can have, and then three
Was
games falls apart.
no. Yeah, I mean, I think like the Astros were really good, obviously, but still, that was kind of like the end of the like Cleveland dynasty, if you call it that. Even though they never won, like
Yeah,
I think they make the playoffs in 2019 or no?
I want to say they missed it. The late 2010s Indians were really good, and they just
Yeah,
never got done the playoffs. So, um,
yeah.
yeah, give me what team do you have for like underachievers?
Well, man, I'm going with a team that honestly didn't even hasn't made the playoffs in recent history, aside from the shortened season, much at all. So I'm going to go with the 2016 Miami Marlins.
Okay.
I feel like they had some teams when they had Stanton. I mean, we've talked about this. They had Stanton, Yelich, Real Muto, Ozuna back in when he was in the league.
Yeah.
D. Gordon was really good. But in 2016, they finished 79 and 82, which was third in the NL East. And man, this team, I really thought that they should have gone farther. I thought they should have made the playoffs, honestly. They had Don Mattingly as their manager. But man, I mean, their starting lineup was uh, not exactly this, but it was D. Gordon. Martin Prado played third base. He was really good.
Okay, I remember him.
Then they had Stanton, Yelich, Ozuna in the outfield. Justin Bour was at first base. He was pretty solid.
Hmm.
And then they had Real Muto at catcher. Shortstop was a Danny Echeverria, who was never really a good hitter, but he was always a really great defender. So,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if you look at that team on paper, the lineup wise, it was probably one of the best in the league if they were all healthy.
That is really good. Even though that was pre like Star Yelich, that's still a really good lineup.
Well, so what I found interesting was actually this season, Yelich had his best season in Miami ever. He drove in 98 runs.
Hmm.
Um, I didn't know he ever drove in that many runs with Miami. I knew he
Yeah.
did it with Milwaukee, but yeah, I mean that year Martin Prado hit 305. He drove in 75 runs. He had like a great season.
Huh.
D. Gordon had 30 stolen bases that season. He was hurt a little bit though. He only played 79 games. So if you think about that stat though,
Oh my
he only
God.
played 79 games and he stole 30 bases. So
That's
that's
crazy. That's almost
yeah.
one
I
every
mean,
game.
I know.
I mean, one every 2 games.
Every
I'm not.
two
No,
games. Yeah,
you know what I meant to say.
that's still it's
Regardless.
like it's insane. Like the fact that they didn't do. I mean, Stanton that year played 119 games, and like let's face it, that's pretty much what you expected from Stanton back then when he was playing the field at whatever the case is. Stanton
Yeah.
probably averaged about 120 games played per season. So he drove in 74 runs, 27 homers. I mean, Ozuna, 23 homers, 76 RBIs. Real Muto hit 303. He had 12 stolen bases, 11 homers for a catcher. I mean, that was back when not there weren't many fast catchers. There still aren't. So,
No.
I mean, Justin Bour played 90 games and he had an 824 OPS. I mean, these guys, I get that some of them were hurt a little bit, but like, I mean, this team on offense was just unreal. I don't understand how they never got it done.
No.
I mean,
Yeah.
I guess like if you look at it, obviously a key issue was probably their starting rotation. Um, Aside from Jose Fernandez, they didn't really have much. But this season, Fernandez had a 16-8 record, 2.86 ERA, 253 strikeouts, 12 and a half Ks per nine. And it sucks that everything happened
Dude.
that season because I would love to be watching him pitch now, man. He was one of my favorite
Don't
pitchers
get
of
me
all
started
time.
on Jose Fernandez, man.
Yeah,
That's
he was
tough.
he was awesome. And this was the season. I think the accident happened late in September, right? There was only about a week left in the season, maybe, or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but it could have been.
Yeah, but if you're looking at it just pure statistically, he had a great season. Again, he was an All-Star in 2016. He was in San Diego when Stanton won the Derby that year. I mean, it was just a cool scenario all around.
Yeah.
And then they had Adam Conley, who is still pitching right now. He had probably his best season this year ever. He had an 8-6 record, 3.85 ERA. I mean, for a guy who wasn't really known to have great years, that was a pretty solid season. ERA under 4. Then, I mean, they had guys like Tom Kohler, Wei-Yin Chen, who was a really disappointing signing for them. He had like a 4.96 ERA that year. Kohler had a 4.33. And I think the last few guys in their rotate, they kind of just pieced together the whole year. So obviously the rotation was a big issue, but I'm telling you this, if they would have made a wild card game and Jose Fernandez would have gotten the chance to pitch in a wild card game, I don't know if anyone would have beaten them, because
they would not have lost that. Yeah.
I mean, his electricity. I mean, can you imagine if there was ever a wild card game with like DeGrom Fernandez or like Scherzer Fernandez? Like, that would have been legendary, dude. That would have been unbelievable. Surprisingly, their bullpen was actually a lot better than I thought it was, too. Like, their closer, AJ Ramos, had 40 saves that year and a 2.81 ERA. He was really good.
Ramos. Yeah.
I feel like he was on the Mets for a while after he was on the Marlins, right? I think
you're right. Now that he's like
point.
That just like unlocked a memory in my brain. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But former Yankee, they had David Phelps in the bullpen. He had like a 2.28 ERA. He was a stud. It was like, I didn't realize that. Kyle Bearclaw was another name that we haven't heard in a while, but like that year he had a 2.85 ERA. He was really good. Dustin McGowan, I don't even know who he is, honestly.
No.
I'm being completely honest. He had a 2.82 ERA that year. I mean, he pitched in 55 games. Like, he was a really great relief pitcher that year. Mike Dunn was a guy I remember. He was a big lefty in the bullpen for them. He had a 3.40 ERA that year. I mean, they had some solid bullpen arms. Surprising. I didn't remember that their bullpen was like that good. I don't know if you know, but and I mean, look, they had a good bench too. Ichiro was their 4th outfielder, but he played a lot because everyone got hurt. Ichiro played like 143 games that year. He hit 291 still. He was a good hitter still. 10 stolen bases. He was still fast at age 42. He was still like really good. I mean, you think about the other guys. They had Derek Dietrich, who we know is a good bench guy. We've seen him play with the Reds and the Marlins. Miguel Rojas. That was before he kind of became the starting shortstop when Echeverria was still there. Chris Johnson. He played with the Braves for a while before this. I mean, they had, aside from their rotation, man, I think they had a pretty solid roster, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So
better than most people realize.
No, yeah. I was when you were at the lineup, I was like, how'd they underachieve this much? I looked it up. So they were 5th in the league in hits, which probably sounds about right based on like what you just said.
Yeah.
But they were 27th in runs. Kind of interesting.
So I actually noticed that when I was looking up their stats, like all the player stats from that year, all their run totals, no one had run totals even close to 100. The highest a player had was like in the 70s, which for a team that's that good at offense, that's kind of an odd stat.
I think just looking at it briefly, I think they didn't hit a lot of homers, and my guess is they just didn't hit with runners on. Like, that's the only thing I could think of if there's that much of a discrepancy.
Yeah, it's like, I guess most people didn't hit with runners on, but then there's like the outlier with Yelich, who drove in 98 runs. He was probably like the only guy who hit with runners in scoring position.
Right. That's weird.
And I mean, if you look at like Stanton, Prado, and Ozuna, they each had like 75 RBIs, let's say. They were like 74, 75, 76. They were all around there, which isn't terrible. Okay. But you want your big guys like that to probably drive in close to 100, just like Yelich did. Yeah, I don't know, man. It was just like, I get, like, if they're not going to score runs and their pitching rotation isn't good, then you're not going to win. But still, it was just kind of an odd team. I think the few years where they had all these guys, it was very strange that they never made the playoffs to me. And again, I know you need a good rotation. I get it. But, like, I mean, still, this lineup, if they are all like at their peak, I would put this lineup against any team. If
Pretty
like if they're
good.
all healthy, I mean,
Yeah.
Stanton, Yelich alone, if they're both at their MVP caliber, that's insane. I mean, Real Muto, obviously we've seen what he can do, and again, I know everything happened with Ozuna, but back in the day, he was a very good hitter in Miami. So on the
Yeah.
baseball field wise, not personal life or anything, but if you're just talking strictly hitting, he was really good.
I would have loved to see just like a full season of like Giancarlo, Yelich, and
Yeah,
Ozuna. I don't know if they ever
I
both
know.
played like 150 games or so a year, but like, damn,
I
man,
feel like possibly in 2017 when Stanton was healthy,
that
like
might
the
have been
entire
right.
season, maybe. Because that year too, Ozuna could have like easily had MVP votes in 2017 too. I think he hit close to like 40 homers, maybe. I don't know what he had, but
Yeah.
he drove in almost as many RBIs as Stanton did. I mean, he had a great year that year. What surprised me about this was Martin Prado, because I knew he played with
Oh yeah.
Miami and he was like a good clubhouse guy and stuff, but like this was probably one of his best seasons ever. 305 with 75 driven in. I mean, that's pretty
Mm-hmm.
good. I know you know him pretty well too because he was with the Braves for a while before the Marlins.
Yeah. And we're just playing like hypotheticals here, but like, let's say most of these guys were still around in like 2020, 2021, and then you added Sanchez and oh wow, I'm
Right.
blanking on their names now.
Alcantara,
Lopez,
Lopez.
Alcantara,
Yeah. Yeah.
Rogers. Like, oh man, dude.
And
Like
imagine
right
they like
now,
still
they're
had
peaking.
Fernandez too,
Well,
like
right.
with
I mean,
those
I was assuming
guys.
that too. Yeah, like
Right. Like Fernandez and then those four. I mean, that would this
no,
team
they
would
would.
probably be the favorite in the NL East all the time. So
Yeah,
oh man, it's just such a shame. They had so much potential, and like I get that everything that happened to Fernandez was kind of out of their control. But
right.
I think that like once everything happened with him in 2017, they really had like no pitching because
Yeah, they
who
were
are they going
done.
to count on? Wei and Chen? Like, I mean, come on, they
Oh
had really
wait.
nobody. But if you think about who they used to have too, like they had Eovaldi for a while.
Oh, did they?
Before
Okay.
that, yeah, they had
Huh.
Eovaldi for a while. They had I don't remember his name. He's a guy who threw a no hitter for them on like the last day of the season one year in like 2014 or 15 or something. I forget his name, but
Yeah.
like he was. I mean, oh man, they had so many opportunities to be a really good playoff team, and they just never got it done.
Yeah. We'll see if their core right now can get anywhere. But I mean,
I
they're still
know.
pretty
Yeah,
far away. So.
yeah, yeah.
All right, and then last thing, like kind of like last week, we want to do a little throwback from 2008 to 2017 ish, kind of like our childhood like seasons
Yeah.
stretches like you might have forgotten about. So, give me who's your guy this week?
Yeah, I mean, my guy, I just did the whole thing about the Marlins. I'm doing a guy who spent 5 of those 10 seasons with Miami or Florida, whatever they were called at the
Right,
time.
right.
Hanley Ramirez, man. He was a
Yeah,
really great hitter that I feel like people forgot about because he kind of tailed off with Boston. But I mean, during these 10 years, his first 5 were with Miami, Florida, and then his next 3 were with the Dodgers. Then he had 3 with Boston. Um, I mean, over these 10 years, he averaged 129 games played, so you probably would have liked that number to be a little bit higher, but
I remember him being played a lot. Yeah,
he still had great seasons with the Dodgers, especially. But he hit 285, 22 homers, 74 RBIs, 841 OPS, and 18 stolen bases. That was his average over these 10 years. So,
Hmm.
you know, if you think about it, if he was healthier, he probably would have hit 330 homers, 100 RBIs, and like 25
Yeah,
stolen bases or something. So, this dude was a stud wherever he played. I remember that trade when he went to the Dodgers. That was interesting because I think that there were extension talks with Miami, and he decided to like he wasn't into it, so they traded him.
yeah.
So that was interesting.
He hit like I want to say like 340 in his first year with them. He had a really good
Yeah,
year with them.
yeah. I think that was like right when he got traded over, or maybe it was the first year because he got traded at the deadline.
Yeah,
So I don't know if it was like the second half or if it was the next year. I know when he did hit 340 though, he got hurt. Like I think he missed half the season. I think it was the next year because he played the first half and he was an all-star and he hit like 340 whatever. And then I think he got hurt for like the whole second half of the year. But In the playoffs, though, for the Dodgers, he played really well. Over 20 games played. I think they were all with LA, although
Okay.
some may have been with Boston at the end. I don't know, though.
Right,
No, it
right.
wouldn't have been because Boston didn't make the playoffs until 2018. But he hit 380, 14 RBIs, 1.027 OPS, and he scored 9 runs over 20 games. I mean, that's pretty good. He only had 1 home run, so you kind of would want more power from him, I think, in the playoffs too, because he was pretty much a power hitter. But
Yeah.
hitting 380 is not going to be a detriment to any team either. So,
No. I
um,
like don't remember those Dodgers teams for whatever reason. Like, did they ever come close?
I feel like they got knocked out by the Cardinals a decent amount, didn't they?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I just will never forget the Kershaw. That was when Kershaw would choke a lot, and
Right, right. I just like
yeah,
who else was Granky on that? Was that later?
Granky.
Granky
No, I
was
think
there.
Granky was yeah. Yeah. I mean, was Bueller up yet in 17? I feel like he might have been.
Maybe. Maybe,
I don't
yeah.
know. I forget who else they had though. I mean, who else was in the Ramirez trade? Was it just him? I don't even remember who
What's
was in that
like
trade.
the name I call Crawford just like popped in my head. But
Oh
that might be
yeah.
something different.
No, well, that wasn't that trade, but Crawford was on the Dodgers during a lot of these years.
Right.
He was a pretty good player, I think.
Yeah, no, he was
Um,
pretty good. He was
oh,
overpaid.
they had Adrian Gonzalez
That's
too.
who it is.
There
Yeah,
was
yeah.
there was the big Boston trade where it was like Crawford and Gonzalez went to LA. Yeah, I remember that now. But yeah, man, I mean, Ramirez, I remember because the infield was like Ramirez, I think Turner, and then it was Gonzalez at first. Who played second? I don't even remember, man. Those teams are such a blur to
Yeah.
me. I know they were good every year, but
Like Andre
um,
Ethier was there. Like there was just a whole
right.
like
Oh man,
mishmash of names.
talk about. Oh man, that would be a good one to talk about. Andre Ethier had a
I
really
I would have
underrated
done him. I
career.
completely forgot. Wow.
Yeah, he was Mr. Dodger too. I feel like he played his whole career with LA, didn't
Yeah,
he?
he was
Yeah.
Kemp. Yeah. Oh, you can go on now with these names.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, they did have Cam. They had Puig. Puig was on all these teams too.
Dang, how'd they not?
Um,
We could have had them be the team that should have won. That
I know.
underachieved.
Yeah. But like Ramirez, 3-time All-Star during this time, 2 Silver Sluggers, 3 top 11 MVP finishes, but one of them was runner-up in 2009 with the Marlins.
Hmm.
He was second in MVP voting. So
Gotcha.
Ramirez really had a great career. I don't know if he's technically retired yet. I don't know if he's still trying to play or not, but
Uh,
um, he was a really fun player to watch when he did play.
I remember
He was awesome.
one of the little things I remember about him was like he would always unbutton the first few buttons of his jersey, and that was always very
Yeah,
like cool. So I was like,
I
oh, I
know.
would like try to do that. Like he was just like
Yeah.
a cool player. I remember that.
Yeah, I mean he was like one of the guys who would pimp the shit out of the ball too.
Right,
Like when he hit a
exactly.
bomb, he would fucking just stand there and like do a bat flip. I mean, he had the like you said, the buttons unbuttoned. I mean,
Yeah.
the thing was too is like at the end he wasn't a very good shortstop anymore, and so that's when he went to Boston. I think they well the first year they tried to put him in left field and that didn't work,
And that was awful. I remember
and
that.
then but then the next year that was when Ortiz retired. And I think his
Okay.
second year in Boston, they put him at the full-time DH, and he was like really good. I
Hmm.
think that was 2000. I don't even know what year that was, but
Yeah, I'm blanking on it.
yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, Hanley Ramirez is a guy I always love to watch. He was a great player. I always liked playing like MLB The Show too, and I would be the
Yeah.
Dodgers like all the time because they just had great players that were fun to
No,
play.
they were
You
they
know
were
who else
nice.
they had? They had Juan Uribe.
Juan Uribe. He was on the Mets for a minute. Yeah, all
Yeah,
these
yeah.
freaking names are coming back to me now. That's
That's
funny.
so funny. Yeah. But who's the guy you got?
I'm gonna go their rivals. I'm gonna go with the Giants. They had that early 2010s runs. I worded that weirdly, but you know what I meant. Um,
Yeah.
so one of the aces of that team I forgot about was Matt Cain. So
I knew you were going
2000,
with that right when you said Ace. I was like, that's
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
Matt Cain.
because I could,
Yeah.
everyone knows Lincecum. I could have done him,
Yeah.
So
Matt
Cain,
Cain's a guy a lot of people forget about, I think.
I did, yeah. So
Yeah.
2005 to 2012, 8 seasons, he averaged 29 starts, 3.27 ERA, like pretty good, not like Cy Young, but pretty good. 192 innings pitched a year. In that time, he threw 14 complete games. He threw the perfect game, 2012.
Right,
I
he
remember him
did.
playing.
Yeah.
3 All-Star games. Obviously the 2 rings.
Yeah.
He fell. It's weird. After 2012, he like fell off a cliff. But he was like 27 or so. And he just really fell off. So like it wasn't long lived, but 2005, 2012, he killed it. In the postseason, on their 2 World Series runs, he had a 2.1 ERA in 8 starts. So he was.
Man,
he was
that
nice.
rotation was filthy back in those days. It was Kane, Lincecum,
Bumgarner was like on the up and
Bumgarner.
coming.
Yeah, right.
I mean, obviously 2014, he really like put him on the rack, but like this was before that. So,
man, I miss the days of Kane, Lincecum as the top 2. Man, they were so awesome to watch.
They were good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who else was like? I was like looking at the 2010 Giants and like, do you remember Aubrey Huff?
Yeah.
There were all these like weird names I never heard of.
I think who's a Cubs manager?
Oh, nah, it's completely blank.
Right now. His brother played, and I think his brother was on those Giants teams. What the hell is it?
I'm not sure. I saw the name like Freddie Sanchez.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, all these guys, I mean, obviously Posey was there, but all these guys I just had no idea. Andres Torres.
I remember that name. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think like the guy I was thinking of was Cody Ross. I believe he was on the 2010 team. I think.
Okay.
I mean, Brian Wilson was their closer. Remember the beard, man? That guy was.
And he always had the sellies when he got the. I remember. Yeah.
But that was what you needed in closers, man. Like you need guys that are kind of off sometimes because they do make the best closers as we've seen before. I mean, that was then they had Brandon Crawford, Brandon Belt, right? They had.
Yeah.
Did they have that? Were they up yet? I think they were in 2010. I believe they were both there. And obviously Buster Posey. Those were the years where I think he won the MVP in 11 or 12. He won Rookie of the Year in 2010, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that was when Posey was really at his best. It's amazing to me that he was as good as he was in the beginning because he was so good.
Yeah. They were real, how do I put it? I feel like they were a bunch of hippies. With Winston come with the long hair. You had Wilson.
Yeah.
You had these random utility guys that were just shipping. They were a very weird team, quote unquote.
Did they have Marco Scutaro at some point too?
Maybe.
I think.
Yeah, that's another
one. Because I feel like every year, then there was a year that they traded for Hunter Pence. I think that was 12.
Yeah, that's Pence.
I mean, I feel like they would always have a different second baseman on every team they won with. I think in 14, they had Panic in 14 when he was coming up and he was really good in the playoffs. Scutaro was 1 year. Yeah, I mean, it's those Giants teams. I feel like we'll always remember that though, because that was right in the middle of us growing up, and they won 3 in the span of 5 years. So those are always really memorable, especially with that rotation. Like we talked about, it was Kane, Lincecum, Bumgarner. No one was really going to beat that, I don't think.
No, yeah. I mean, I'll transition us into our stat of the week. I'll stick with Kane for a second. I mentioned how good he was in the postseason. 2010, he actually didn't allow a run in the postseason. Really? It was only 3 starts. Wow. Right? That's it's not much. But, he didn't give up a run. I mean, you combine that with Lincecum, teams were not scoring off them. So they were pretty filthy pitching wise.
I feel like a lot of people remember the core fielders and position players from those teams, but you forget how good Kane really was. I mean, it's kind of unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, that wraps it up for us. I'm sure we'll do some sort of throwback next week.
We'll keep thinking of stuff to talk about unless this lockout ends. That would be nice.
Yeah, I'm not counting anytime soon. So, but take care, guys.
Yeah, see you guys next week.